question to both of you. I am a geographer and I work in teacher training. I am a lecturer in teacher training here in Bern. And I wanted to come with my dear colleague, she's a historian, and we will teach a course next year about the Israel-Palestine conflict here in teacher training. And we find it quite difficult to teach that in a non-biased way. Here, I feel that most students have it's like a bit of a reflex, pro-Palestine. And often bordering on anti-Semitism. And we try really hard to give them critical thinking about how they think about this conflict. But maybe you have an advice how we can teach this in a non-biased way.
Okay. First of all, if you want to teach about a geography course about Israel-Palestine, you should read Nurit Peled.
You have to spell it.
Nurit Peled is a political geographer, and you must read him. He wrote the book Ethnocracy, and he writes a lot about the land and power, and about the Jewish National Fund, all these things that have to do with the land. Okay? And I don't think it's biased because the fact is that Zionists colonized Palestine. Okay? And the discourse of equal claim on the land is biased because there's no equal claims. People came from outside and colonized the place. And this is what you have to teach. If you teach social geography, then you have to teach about second-rate citizens. Palestinian citizens are discriminated by law in Israel. And this must be taught, it must be known. They cannot purchase land, they cannot expand. There are lots of jobs that are closed there, that are forbidden for them, and so on. So it's not biased if you stop thinking about the equal claim. There's no equal claim. There is oppression, there is occupation. There are racist laws in Israel, in the state of Israel, against its own citizens. And this must be known. So first of all, geography with Nurit Peled, and then social geography, you have a lot. You have a lot, Elisha Porat, there are many people in Israel who write about it in English. And I don't know why you said anti-Semitism, because it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism.
You talked about these Nazi comparisons
Yes.
that are in Jewish textbooks.
Yes.
And here we have a strong belief that nearly all Nazi comparisons to Holocaust, which sort of make it a relative incidence and not a unique incidence, are bordering on anti-Semitism.
Okay. So Holocaust researchers today are debating it a lot. And I suggest you read the last book of Dirk Moses, The Problem of Genocide, because Holocaust scholars in Israel today are for relativism, because the Holocaust was not a unique event, they say. It was an event in a chain of events of genocide. It has its roots in European culture of enlightenment, and it has to be looked at as part of the massacres of the 20th century, including the Nakba. Okay? There's no way of talking about the Nakba except in Holocaust language, because Holocaust is studied everywhere and the Nakba is studied nowhere. So there's no special language you can talk about the Nakba, only in the language of Holocaust. And therefore I suggest you read the book of Elias Khoury, My Name is Adam, The Children of the Ghetto. where he talks about the massacre of Lida in Palestine, in Israel, headed by Yitzhak Rabin and Moshe Dayan, where they massacred a population of Lida in the mosque and then expelled the rest of the population, and they call it a death march. And those who remained, they really ghettoized them. And they brought people from villages nearby and from Lida to burn the bodies and to bury them in mass graves. And the people who did that called themselves Sonderkommando. So you have two things. You have, first of all, the Nazification of Palestinians by Israelis, and you have this evident comparison, because genocide cannot be compared, genocide can be defined only by comparison to other such events. I don't think this is anti-Semitism. I think this is really putting things in their frame, in their context, and teaching students to become aware of the suffering of others. Because in Israel, they said, we are the only sufferers. We, our grandparents. Present-day Israelis are what Bauman calls hereditary victims, okay? They are not victims. They have nothing to do with the Holocaust. The people who torment Palestinians have nothing to do with the Holocaust, but they manipulate the Holocaust in order to do that, okay? So this should be said. This should be done. And you can find a lot of scholars, Israeli scholars, who write about it. There's a wonderful book called Holocaust and the Nakba by Amos Goldberg, who is one of the greatest Holocaust scholars in the world, and Bashir Bashir, who is a Palestinian and also studies the Holocaust and the Nakba. And you have a lot of people there who write and really open this, okay? Open this, because today the definition that was accepted of genocide defends all the genocidal countries because of one item, that it says you have to prove explicit intent. Okay? Hitler said, I want to kill them all, but nobody says that today. Okay? So please read this literature, because there's a lot of debate today, especially with the definition of IRA of anti-Semitism and the counter-definition, which is called the Jerusalem definition by the scholars that I mentioned, who are Israeli scholars. And they don't accept this definition. And the fact that people who criticize the very oppressive, racist regime of Israel are called anti-Semitic is an oxymoron. Because if there is a country where Jews are persecuted for their beliefs, is Israel. I haven't talked about it, I just mentioned the others who are not Palestinians. Okay? And if you take Palestinians to be Semitic, then of course. And there's so much literature about it.
The book that you mentioned, Bashir Bashir and Amos Goldberg, it's also taught in university, so
yes.
You can use it.
Right.
And
they're both
also,
in the Hebrew University.
It's not really compared, because I have one chapter there in the book, my chapter. It's give the Nakba, and a lot of authors write about the Nakba and the Safar, and it give people talk about the Holocaust, and they edit the book together.
Yes. Now, when we say compare, we don't say equate. Okay? I don't know if you know the book of Michael Rothberg about multidirectional memory. He talks about that too. He says you should talk about suffering of people by comparison, but not by equation. What happened in Rwanda can be compared but not equated to what happened in Nazi Germany. Okay? What happens in Gaza, a lot of people compare Gaza to Warsaw Ghetto. They are comparable points, but they are not equated. And this book really makes it very clear. Okay? It doesn't mean that every Israeli soldier is a Nazi soldier, no. Of course, it doesn't mean that every Palestinian terrorist is a Nazi either. But in Israel, everybody calls everybody Nazi. Okay? When people had to leave the Gaza Strip, the Jews, they put yellow stars on their children's coats and asked them to go out like that, like the boy from Ghetto Warsaw. Okay? And the other way around. And this is another thing that you can teach. How they take the symbol, how everybody is manipulating the symbol. Okay? And it had nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is persecution of Jews in Europe. Although some textbooks in Israel speak today about Muslim anti-Semitism. Muslims have never been anti-Semitic. Never thought about final solution. There were some pogroms, there were some, unpleasantries, of course, because the Jews were a minority, but it was never the final solution. It was never concentration camps. So all these things, if you know all these things, you can really cook something.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we would conclude. We are in time, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much.